let us try to dive deeper into these use cases now. So it is my pleasure to invite our panelists today. May I welcome Dr. Charit Bhogra. He's the CEO of Tricog and also a cardiologist. He has traveled all the way from India for the conference. So a big round of applause for Dr. Charit Bhogra. Uh, can I also invite Priya Abani? Priya is the CEO of AliveCore. She has, speaking of transitions, she's also made a transition from starting from tech to now in healthcare. And she has just arrived from her travels, and after this conference, she's traveling again. So Priya, thank you so much for taking the time. And then can I also invite Karan Syal? Karan is the head of BD at Reveal Therapeutics, and he's also previously was the VP of partnerships. Pleasure to have Karan here on the stage. Karan is going to walk us through some of the biopharma use cases, be it drug discovery or improving commercialization. Priya and Charit are going to talk more about the medical device use cases. So maybe let's start maybe by, I gave a brief introduction, but maybe we start by maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. And if you can focus on what excites you about implementing AI and what keeps you up at night, that would be nice. So maybe we start with Karan. Yeah.
Hey guys, my background, trained in academia, worked at Genentech, built and exited my own startup. And then since then, I've been back in the biopharma world, earlier in Komodo, socializing the data assets, and now essentially enabling GenAI and AI products on top of those data assets in healthcare. What excites me most at the moment is this untapped revolution around GenAI. We are seeing a wide diversity of use cases along the spectrum of biopharma and R&D in clinical and in even commercial operations. The two which stand out to me are essentially around drug discovery and how AI is being used in not only for target discovery, but even new molecule synthesis and even figuring out whether in silico these drugs really work or not. On the commercial operation side, what is very exciting to me is this new wave of leveraging unstructured data. So think any unstructured data which was not previously being used by commercial operations. Think Viva CRMs, think market researchers, think PDS docs. All of that untapped data asset is now being, leveraged with the help of Gen AI and enabling a lot of use cases and value on the ground at the moment. So that's what excites me the most along the spectrum of biopharma. Uh, what keeps me up at night? I think just the excitement about Gen AI. But yes, I mean, there are definitely like challenges on the horizon as well. As in when these agents get super powerful, I feel like there is a mindset pivot which is coming, and how fast that mindset pivot really happens in the biopharma world is something which we are all observing closely.
Great. I'm going to go next. Hi, everybody. I'm Priya Abani. Just great to see so many of you come on Saturday morning to watch us. So we'll try to say something intelligent, I'm sure. um, AliveCore is a health tech company. We've been around for a little bit more than a decade. Can I see a show of hands if you've heard of the device KardiaMobile? Okay, it's not too many, but so that means we have work to do. It's I think what is exciting for me is this convergence of AI and health. For example, we started off being a hardware company that created a device that can be used from outside the hospital to measure your ECG. And the reason why this becomes important is with every new determination, which we use building AI, that we go and get clearance from the FDA, that hardware device or that piece of hardware gets more and more intelligent and more useful and more valuable. So we started off with a single lead device with 3 AI determinations. We now have 8 AI determinations cleared from the FDA. We went and then built a 6 lead device using the data that we had collected from this prior device. And we now have just recently built a 12 lead device with 35 determinations cleared from the FDA. And you can just imagine when we went to them first and said, we want to get heart attack detection cleared. I think we probably had 177 meetings with the FDA before we got the clearance. And we trained, so we are a mix of, and we were doing AI a lot far before it was cool, to be honest. And we, it's a mix of supervised training, where, especially in things like healthcare, which is what is also answering the question of what keeps me awake, is you have to provide the sensitivity and the specificity to make sure that the patient is served in the best way possible and there's not too many false alerts or wrong alerts. So we now have, MI detection, ischemia, all of that, and we have to figure out how to, go from being a patient-centric company to somebody who serves the physicians. But in the end, without AI, what we're doing would not be possible. And it's just such an exciting time to be in healthcare and in the world, which is, recognizing and valuing AI finally.
Thank you. And I just realized that we have an interventional radiologist, interventional cardiologist, medical device maker, AI practitioner. So all emergencies are covered. So,
I need an X-ray to do my job.
um, Matt and I have similar stories. I started off as a cardiologist treating heart attacks. And I'm from Bangalore, India, where in India, 3 million deaths happen every single year due to heart disease. And 50% of those deaths can be saved if only we can identify these people quick enough so that they can enter the care pathway. And that is the reason why I started my journey to build a system where you could gather data from remote clinics, hospitals, nursing homes, use a combination of AI plus MD working together in one closed unit to diagnose these patients so that they can get treated quickly. And just to give you where have we reached after 10 years on this journey, we've crossed the 20 millionth patient that we've served. We are doing this at a rate of 500,000 patients every single month. And this number is going to double over the next year and a half. And still, after doing all of this, we are less than 3% of where we want to be. So I'm hoping that with AI, we will have the ability to screen 100 million people by 2030, and that is the goal of the journey that all of us at TriCog is. If it wasn't for AI, this company would not exist. And it is simply because of one simple fundamental problem. The number of people like me and like Matt, there are very few of us in this world. In India, there are 5,500 interventional cardiologists for a population of 1.4 billion.
Crazy.
Right? So, and guess where all of us are? All of us are in large tertiary care hospitals in big cities, and the patients are everywhere but those two people. So you can't produce more doctors. It took me 14 years of training to get where I was, and the only way is to take the help of AI to scale human expertise so that we can reach out to the people who need medical help at the time of their greatest need. So what excites me the most about AI is that ability, the superhuman ability, so to speak, that it enables few doctors to be able to have a much larger impact on the world that is. What keeps me worried at night is something that even Matt alluded, is the technology is moving far ahead than where medicine is and the adoption of the applications of AI. I think that we all, part of the medical community, need to be far more proactive to adopting. It could be use cases which are simple like billing, administration. It could be use cases of aiding doctors in diagnosing, reducing the workloads. But this is something that what worries me is the most is the reluctance of, or the hesitation or the fear that the medical community has in adoption and building solutions. And I'm hopeful over the next couple of years that is going to change.
Excellent. Matt, anything you want to share about what keeps you up?
Well, I was going to say all of these stories, incredibly exciting. So the idea of unstructured data, can't agree more. In fact, we're now, you might agree with this, unstructured data was the bane of my existence. It's half the reason I got into AI in the first place. The challenges of that, and then to watch it sit in healthcare systems and not be used intelligently drove me crazy. So I mean, I resonate with that. And then on the device side, certainly there's a lot of hard work on the device side. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity still, as you both have alluded to. But you know, the combination of making devices more intelligent, which I think is where you're kind of going in a way to augment existing workflows. It's something that you know, I really see as the future. It is one of the spots in the hospital. I often say there's if you imagine the hospital as real estate, there's the EHR, that's a big building, really established. There's the imaging, right, real estate, you know, PACS system and VNA, and then there's this empty lot that says for rent, and it's all the procedural stuff, the stuff that me and the groups in the ORs do, because we don't have a great system on either side of the fence for that. But there's a lot of data that we generate. I don't know about you. 90% of the data I do in a procedure is not stored in any meaningful way. That seems like an opportunity lost because that infrastructure is not there. So I think there's a lot more we can do. But then the devices that we use in the cath lab and in the OR are not, quote unquote, that intelligent, right? Sometimes it's, you know, Charles is friends with the, you know, board member of a device company, and that's why we have a certain brand. You know, like it's not intelligently decided upon. It's not evidence-based. A lot of the work that we do is either via training. Anyway, so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, there too. But what keeps me up at night, honestly, it's I used to give this talk right after 4 was finally released, and we could talk about it. And I had a slide with 3 questions. The first was, have you used ChatGPT? And everyone typically would raise their hand because, you know, it's kind of ubiquitous. But the second question I used to ask was, how many subscribe and use 4? And almost all the hands would be down, maybe 2 or 3 people in the room. And I said, okay, we're really early, right? So if your impression of what this wave is because you used 3.5 and you saw your kids use it for a homework assignment and you're like, it's okay, but it's not that great, you're already behind. And then the last question is have you lost sleep? Because if you haven't lost sleep thinking about the existentialism of what this technology means, then you aren't paying attention, is what I often said. And a lot of it, partly about the reluctance. We see reluctance everywhere. We have this phenomenon called the secret cyborg. You may have heard this term, but there are people using it every day at work, but they're probably not telling their boss about it. The reluctance is that when you start to use it, particularly if your job is to move paper from one side of the desk to the other, which is a valuable contribution to the overall broader ecosystem, you think to yourself, well, geez, that model just kind of did about half of the things that I am responsible for doing. That's very existential. And I think all those of us in the medical field have asked it questions and been pretty impressed with it. There is that reluctance comes a little bit from fear too. And I think that that's something we should acknowledge. But at the same time, I think wrapping your heads around it and then just thinking about, I'm a glass half full guy. What does this mean? How do I prepare for this technology to really come in and revolutionize the way I work, the people I can reach, the impact that I can have on the world? And it keeps me from getting into that spiral, you know? Yeah.
Excellent. Let's start diving deeper into the use cases, right? So if you can help us really add some specifics in terms of how you are implementing AI-based use cases within your specific domain, that would be super helpful for the audience. So, I mean, any of you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I can go first. I think when we think about use cases, right, let me focus. I think drug discovery, it's been in the news, everybody knows about it, right? So I'll focus less on that, but more on the commercial operations and unstructured data piece, perhaps. So in the biopharma world, right, if I'm a field rep or a sales guy, structured databases exist to enable me to go see Dr. Charit, and I know the prescriptions, I know what conferences he's attending. So it's a good starting point to talk about. However, the unstructured data which is being collected, let's say through interactions of Dr. Charit with the larger biopharma, right? I mean, his nurse might have called the company when it comes to asking for advice or the experience or those details. That's largely been captured in some database sitting somewhere, but the ability to generate insights from that has not surfaced until this LLM revolution. So those are the kind of use cases which are like fastly evolving. So now to the sales guy on the field, not only you can give structured insights, but you could also tell him that, hey, last week, physician called, the nurses called, what were they thinking about? What were they talking about? What kind of negative or positive experience did they have? So combination of those is very powerful when it comes to equipping the field to have the right kind of interactions on the ground. And even beyond, right? I mean, unstructured is not just this captured data. It could also mean these market researchers. It could also mean these long docs. It could also mean helping medical summarize these scientific papers. All of those are captured within the realms of unstructured data. And when it comes to tactically implementing, no offense, Matt, in the limited institutions that we work with, right, Anthropic and Claude models seem to be slightly the preference of choice at the moment. We're still in the early days of discovering and iterating upon those and building RAG-based architectures to be able to fine-tune those even further. However, yeah, I mean, it's picking up. Folks on the ground are enjoying it. Uh, People are beginning to see value in terms of improving their own workflows and adding operational efficiencies on the ground. What I'm really looking forward to is this also driving revenue, in the near future through a few use cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I can go next. So I think we're deploying AI like across the board, as I mentioned, starting off with devices and how do you make those devices more valuable. So there is a series, you started off as being an AFib company, AFib, Brady, Tacky, then went to sinus rhythms, and now all the way to ischemias and MIs, right? So that's the range. um, for those kind of applications, it will be supervised training for a long time, to be honest. Those are the deep neural networks that we need to be building. But now we also have a hypertension service, which is basically combining the ECG platform with a blood pressure device. And you start collecting longitudinal data, which is quite mind-boggling. So we've sold about 3 million devices over the last 5 years since my team's also here, my CTO and CPO. Since we have joined the company, we're now collecting north of 1.3 million ECGs per week in our system. We are collecting equal number of blood pressure readings into our system. So imagine the longitudinal value of this data, because it's the same patient, right? The denominator is growing, but there's no way it can grow as fast as the numerator. And now you have longitudinal data collected over years of all of these patients. So you can do things like LVH. You can do things which are completely different, which right now, if a startup wanted to do, or even if a large company, you would have to go purchase that data from a hospital system. And half of them don't even know how to store the data correctly, forget like selling it, right? So there's only a few institutions right now in the country who have made that into a business. So when you start adding that power and now you add other sensors into it, you can, the ultimate goal is to predict ahead of time any kind of heart disease, starting with heart and obviously going to other parts of our body, so that somebody does not even have to come to the point of rushing to the hospital, just a post-stroke, post-heart attack. Like that's the goal here, is to save lives, right? That's why we are all in this mission together. The other part of what we do is basically, we are obviously not lost on the generative AI bandwagon that's going on right now. So we have created it's basically a LLM-based chatbot, but we call it something more exotic. We call it Ask Cardia, and it's a heart health coach, right? And it's getting intelligent by the day. And we have put it in the app for, we started off with like customer support, but now we are expanding it to more like, personalized data. So you can go and say, please summarize my, my last 3 months of heart condition to me. And it's going to go look up to you at your blood pressure records. It's going to look at your ECG and then give you a short summary that you can then send to a doctor. And it's getting trained, right? So we're adding more and more coaching elements into it. And I was really amused almost right now, last week, when a large health institution came and asked us, about licensing that chatbot to them. And I said, it's less than a month old. It's obviously, the people are asking some very interesting questions, right? So we are kind of watching the kind of questions coming in. We are bounded. So if you go and say, I want to go jump off a cliff, it's not going to respond to you, right? It's going to say call 911. So it's bounded only for heart health. But we're watching very interesting behaviors happen through that. So very exciting times. And because we are like in the field of cardiology, we have the luxury of going top to bottom just in cardiology. We're not trying to do 15 things. So that is another piece of advice for anybody starting a company in healthcare is like pick your first point and hoist the flag there. It might take a decade to the point here for both of us, but that's probably the way to go versus trying to solve like 1,800 different things.
Yeah. You touched on a little bit on this traditional AI versus Gen AI.
Yeah.
I want to maybe dive a little bit deeper into this. Somebody explained it to me this way, that traditional AI is very good about looking at large amounts of information and then predicting something. And Gen AI is very good about taking large amounts of information and reasoning and communicating back, right? And if you can combine these two, that's where, magic is going to happen. So, and it looks like you are trying to, for your AFib use cases, as you explain, it's more predictive, and then the chatbot is more articulating. Is that how you are approaching this?
Absolutely, that's the way we are thinking of it. Yeah, we're trying to just augment along with the human, the access to cardiologists and the coaches. We want to give them a digital avenue too, because there are times where somebody doesn't want to talk to a person. They don't want to talk to a coach and they don't want to talk to a cardiologist, but they still want to find the answer. And they're probably going to go to Google or somewhere else and try to get a bunch of links versus we are trying to like pull it together and give them an actual response, which is very personal.
Yeah. It's funny how quickly the use cases are evolving, right? So chatbots are, coming, they're everywhere. Now these chatbots also have their own limitations, and sometimes you want to stay within the medical guardrails to not give inaccurate information. So now we have also built what we call LLM Judge, which is an LLM to essentially estimate the responses of another LLM and classify the errors to make sure that, those guardrails are not crossed.
Okay, we are stealing that idea. So
yes, call me.
I like it.
I've seen when we started, AI was not a thing in 2014. So cog comes from cognitive computing. That was what the previous word of previous terminology of what AI was. And 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 let me just step back as a clinician and tell you how remarkable the newer technologies are. So when we started off, it was very deterministic. I need to identify 150 different heart conditions from a 12-lead EKG, right? And the problem we had was, how do we gather data digitally? How do we annotate that data digitally so that we can train different models on it? Now, this was a very daunting task in 2014. And the way we went about to do it is that we built an entire service. So people send us the data to give an interpretation, and within the service, you have the medical team, which today has grown to 87 of them. Their main role is to annotate the data so that the AI can be trained on. Now, in 2018, where newer AI techniques started to come, and from being more deterministic to be more predictive or probabilistic, we now have the capability, for instance, when you go for your health check, your annual health check, you take your 12-lead EKG, it may sound a little warning that says, hey, you may have heart failure in 6 months' time. So please go ahead and get an echo done. Right? Or you may have pulmonary artery hypertension. Please go get an echo done. Or your aortic valve may be starting to narrow down. Please see a cardiologist. And we're able to do this because of paired data with ECG and echo that we're getting together and training these models. If you had asked me as a cardiologist, can you take a look at this 12-lead EKG and tell me whether this person has a narrow aortic valve, I would laugh at you and say, this is not possible. Go away. But that acceptance that these statistical methods and models that are there that can change the pathway of a patient, and so that we can preempt and prevent disease. I think that is where I am most excited about for AI.
I think we heard some similar themes when Priya, you were talking about, cardiology use cases, screening, and sort of diagnostic use cases. Charit, you are working on similar things, but from very different angles and very different geographies, right? So tell us a little bit about, where you started, how you're geographically expanding, what are some challenges in doing so, and what lessons probably can we learn from, both of your journeys in these use cases.
Please go.
Yeah.
No, you should go first.
So the use case TriCog started to solve was a very focused single use case. People are dying with heart attacks. Can we get them to treatment quickly? Now, that is not a use case here in the US. If you're having a heart attack, you will dial 911. The, the infrastructure has been set up so beautifully that the time to treatment, which is measured from a systems way, and the US has done a fantastic job for most parts. And that is not the case for the rest of the world. The average time it takes to treat a heart attack from where I come from is 360 minutes. That is way beyond the golden hour. Right? So the use case that we went about to solve is a very emerging markets use case. But what we've been able to build and build so successfully are models that not only are we are scaling across Southeast Asia and Africa, but those same models can very well be exported to the heart is the same anywhere in the world. And that is that is the beauty of these models is that what can be generated in one country with resource constraints can very well be exported to other geographies and other use cases.
Very well
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
First of all, congratulations on everything you guys have achieved, and the kinds of numbers you're talking about, it's just mind-boggling. It's amazing. So really, sitting next to a cardiologist when you run a cardiology company is a little daunting. We started off in the US, right? And we started off with, to his point, actually, a slightly different use case was about peace of mind, because the company was initially very focused on atrial fibrillation, right? So it's like there is 10 million plus people living with AFib in the country, and they don't want to be rushing to ER because we know how much it costs here to rush to ER. They don't want to be, in a situation where there's not family members around us. We live in nuclear families. People are not, rushing to help each other out, although the intention is always there. It just, the structure does not allow us to do that. So we wanted to provide something for people where they can measure their heart health from home and be in control. That's where the company started from. Then as we grew, we obviously realized there is a lot of overlap between that and hypertension. And as I mentioned, we have now expanded to a much bigger TAM, which is bizarre to refer to your patients as TAM, but that's unfortunately the case. There's 156 million people in this country living with some kind of a hypertension issue. The first country we stepped outside the US when we launched, this is when I had just joined, and I was prior working at Amazon running Alexa voice service, and one of my jobs was to take to Alexa to, so I took Alexa to 72 countries, which was insane, and we did it within like a 4-month period. So you can imagine, obviously a lot of my team are as foolish as I. They left Amazon and they joined me here in healthcare, where we didn't know how to spell healthcare, but we went first to UK. And there is a similar system, but then we have to deal with somebody called the NHS. So we learned a whole different trick. We're still learning it, not solved yet. I think the country that has mirrored our fast ramp up the most and the fastest is Canada, which is just something we launched only 2.5 years back, and the numbers are just looking fantastic. We are now selling in Australia. We obviously Spain, Italy, France. We have partnerships with resellers and distributors to go there. A lot of that is our hardware business, though. So I'm very impatient, as you can tell. So In the US, it's hardware and now subscriptions. In a lot of other parts of the world, it's starting off with hardware, and then we're going to go towards subscriptions. And then in some parts of the world, we want to go directly to subscriptions and do B2B. So B2B to C or B2B. And it's been like a fantastic journey. So for example, our launch in India, I mean, contrary to what he's saying, has been very rocky because there's not many people in that country who think about AFib. Like they have a doctor right around the corner and they can pay literally 100 rupees and have access to somebody. Why would you spend $100 buying a, US FDA device? So we've had to change how we position our technologies. Um, who do we work with locally? We can't just assume that what worked in the United States is just going to work outside. Japan is a whole different use case for us where you need to have a physician recommendation before you will go and buy the device. Completely counterintuitive given the number of people over the age of 60 who are living in Japan away from their children, right? So each country is a new learning for us. And the good news is, as was mentioned, everybody has a heart. The heart is a single point of failure, and it's our job is to continually provide affordable devices. That's one thing. Both my chairman Vinod Khosla and I, we like very strongly believe in this is not raising prices and keeping the devices affordable so that across the world, anybody who needs access to them can be, buying them, and hopefully we're providing something useful.
Just to add one point to the fantastic work that Priya mentioned. Um, Technology exists, but one of the key inputs to that technology is high quality data, and perhaps Matt can speak a little more after me. Um, the we've been able to reach a point of getting to 20 million patient data set. And the first 10 million took us 8 years. The next 10 million took us 1 year, 11 months.
It's amazing.
The size and population of Asia and of course India gives you that opportunity to gather vast amount of data very quickly and have the ability to annotate that data, high quality annotation of the data. And I do believe that working together in such forums, that would be a great way to leverage the deep expertise that people like Matt and his team have, and the ability to source, annotate, and co-build these models, which are applicable pretty much worldwide. And to me, that is something that perhaps Matt could speak a little more about.
Well, I'm happy to talk to you now and after, because I think it's really fast. I mean, honestly, the scale of data that has resulted in the kind of performance we've seen, and even in the healthcare use cases, have been shockingly small, at least from the healthcare specific domain, right? All of you've kind of have probably at least seen some of the work that's been done to look at the competencies of these models outside of text-based use cases, and it's not impressive. It's not necessarily a surprise. But we also see that it does have competencies in natural images and video and et cetera. How do we then bring some of the multimodal competencies into the models? That's certainly something that my research has focused on for a long time, and certainly my group is focused on now. And so to your point, I don't even think you need the kind of scale that you've already collected, but one of the interesting things that you've said, I think that I wanted to make sure that resonated really well with the audience, was that you pointed out that there's things that you can get from that image data that humans can't do. This happens in radiology. This certainly happens in digital pathology. We have limitations, but these models don't, and they have certainly their weaknesses as well. But one of the biggest applications that we've seen in the radiology space, and this is going back to some of the work at Stanford, was we called it opportunistic screening, is what our term for it was, which we're acquiring this data anyway. If we can get a different insight from that data that we're already acquiring for another purpose, that could drive a use case that might save your life or a loved one's life, we should do that. That is a very small incremental cost and not requiring you to do additional work. So ECG has been a phenomenal. I've seen many different projects. Believe it or not, on a chest X-ray, it can give you a decent idea of your left ventricular ejection fraction, which again I can't do as a radiologist. And non-gated chest CTs for Agatston scores. The list goes on. I find that this area at the scale of data you're talking about could unlock some really fascinating opportunities to not just make the healthcare systems we have faster, more efficient, but actually transform the way that we actually deliver that care. In other words, being able to flag things far earlier, so we're not, getting into that sick care, healthcare sort of spiral that we find often. So we should definitely talk more because I'd love to learn.
I have a follow-up to everybody, right? I think we are diving deeper into the dimensions of data, depth versus breadth in a way. I'm curious from your own respective fields, what do you guys think is missing, and what is the ideal use case which either doesn't have breadth, longitudinal breadth, or let's say the required depth to be able to solve? What's the use case which you guys wish you guys would really want to pursue, but it either lacks in the depth of number of patients, or it lacks in the breadth of longitudinal patient journey points, let's say? Have you guys encountered any such use case yet, which is like more aspirational, but the data doesn't exist in one or the other dimension?
I'll take a first go at a very difficult question. Thank you.
It's out of syllabus, I'm sorry.
Out of syllabus
Let's
question.
ask him a hard question.
And Priya mentioned this a little while ago. I think the next unlock would be not just is longitudinal data. Right? If we are able to pair outcomes data of what happened to you during the course of your lifetime to a particular test or modality, like he mentioned a chest X-ray. You take a chest X-ray and imagine the AI says, you know what, you have a higher chance of developing lung cancer, please go get a screening done, because the last 10,000 such patients which the AI has seen, it found that these people develop lung cancer in the future. I do believe that would be a very useful unlock for medicine, because the key test is, are you changing the fate or the pathway of that patient so that you either prevent a disease or catch it early enough so that it doesn't cause a complication. So I really look forward to longitudinal data to be able to see in the future models that will be able to do that.
It's an excellent point. Yeah. Speaking of data, I think, one of the most debated topics is about data governance and the ethics related to AI and the privacy issues. Is this also a big challenge or hurdle in pursuing these use cases, and how are you approaching this? Does anyone want to comment on this?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit around that aspect. So one use case or a case comes to mind, which was a couple of months back, right? Where, so this is more in the realms of structured data. Effectively, one of the large biopharmas wanted to fix race and ethnicity biases, which might exist in physician prescriptions out there. So this was a very unique case because this, like on the data governance side, you had to source race and ethnicity data. You had to ensure that the source mix of race and ethnicity data in US, let's say, is derived from the right sources, like consumer-derived sources should be minimal. And in addition to that, right, when we talk about data governance, there are also privacy laws which the states are enacting, which effectively would have, like redacted some of that data. So having the right data governance in place from that aspect was important for this case. The second aspect was more around when you're looking to build AI cohorts, let's say for this particular physician, looking back at the history, how many patients have they treated, what kind of decisions they have made, etc. Balancing data cohorts to minimize AI biases was also important. And the third aspect was, right, if you're equipping somebody to be able to go talk to that physician for those insights, how do you have the right guardrails in place to ensure that HIPAA and all of those things are not violated?
Mhm.
So to give a perfect example, right, you might have the perfect information from the structured world. You could find out that, hey, there is a little bit of bias around, certain patients. And what if you could also predict that, hey, this is a patient which the doctor is treating where is this certain amount of bias, but that n is only equal to 1. Do you really give that insight to somebody on the ground or the field or the medical world? Because then there is an odd chance that you could violate HIPAA in case, the medical reps decides to show up on the same day as patients. So I think this is where this was one of the unique cases where we transcended the boundaries of governance, biases, and even insights.
Yeah. I think in the interest of time, we want to leave ample time for the audience to ask questions. So I'm going to ask one last question, but if you have any questions, maybe, think about it. And if you can already start probably even lining up in some time, then we can take audience questions. So the last question that I have for you all is, what is one advice that you would give to this audience based on your journey? I think many of them are probably either already on their journey or have not started it. So how would you help them jumpstart? Uh, any advice for the audience here?
All right, I guess I can go first. I don't know everyone's sort of perspective on the market and how they're tackling it or what they're interested in focusing on. But the best advice I can give, at least right now with the way things are progressing, is to plan for the impossible. So a use case that you do not think you can do or cannot be done, that's the use case that I recommend you focus on. And to ensure that you will be ready when the technology is at the place to address your use case.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I think I would actually have the counterintuitive advice, which is perhaps start small, have a tangible vision, because there is ample risk averseness when it comes to Gen AI use cases in operational workflows. So having a tangible vision which could drive things forward is important. Um, I think a visionary vision sometimes could like misalign expectations a little bit. So any enterprises out there, just have a tangible, executable vision in the near term.
Sorry, you wanna go?
No, I was thinking about my grandmother and trying to get her to use uh, um, um, a smartphone, right? And that's the picture which is there in my head for people who are not ready to embrace what is going to come.
Mhm.
I would say that it is very the analogy comes to my mind that I'm teaching my grandmother how to use a smartphone. And let me tell you, now that she knows how to use that smartphone, I get a message every day in the morning. saying, okay, uh, and she is so much happier in using a mobile device and communicating with her family. Um, I think that we are actually very, very fortunate to be one of the few generations that we've seen what has happened in the past and what will happen in the future. I think that is how game-changing AI is going to be.
Yeah. Uh, I think my biggest advice would be is to know your customer. Because when you know your customer and you understand your resources, uh, given the big vision that I'm sure many of you would have, I think that's going to help you determine what can you do with humans, where you would need the help of AI, what is a scalable problem, what is not a scalable problem. And that when you understand those nuances, you can deploy AI in almost every single facet of your company. Or you can decide to deploy it only in 3 things and do the other 4 things in a traditional way, because that is like faster to market, less unknowns, although it might be more capital intensive. So knowing your customer is probably the only advice I would give, because you can't start off building a company because you want to build an AI company. That's not going to help anybody. You're going to build a company because you're trying to solve a very, very, very hard problem that frankly nobody else has the intention or the drive to solve. And I hear many, many times where people come and say, especially, the young generation now, it's just fascinating. 24-year-olds all want to become CEOs. They come and ask for the formula because they want to start an AI company. And my constant, feedback to them is, I'm very proud of, your intentions and where you want to go. You're going to do great things in life. But what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Who is the customer of the problem? And then work backwards from there. So
Very well said. Excellent. I think let's shift gears a little bit. I think we already have a few questions. Do you want to start?
Yeah. Good morning. Hi, my name is Raghu Gulapalli. I'm with LV Prasad Eye Institute in India. Great panel. Learn a lot here. First is just an offer. So we have longitudinal data going back 35 years, about 40 million patients, 150 million visits. I invite anybody here and the panelists as well to come work with us and see whether we can work together in terms of length and depth, because we are working with people outside of ophthalmology as well in terms of seeing what the value of the data we have is. Additionally, we have a longitudinal epidemiology study which has been going on for 30 years, which has been well published, and that data is all there as well. Secondly, my question actually is, while you've talked about interventional cardiology, interventional radiology, et cetera, I think one of the big questions I have is what happens to the patient after they've been diagnosed, right? What is the referral network look like, and how does that work in countries like India or the rest of the world where you're working? And is that something which has been fixed, or is that something which you're working on? And is there an AI fix to that, right? And look for your answers.
Priya,
Let me try and address that question. As a doctor or as a physician, just telling somebody that there's something wrong with you, and after that not doing anything else is really, really wrong.
Yep.
Right? And to close the loop, and I think that is what is really important, and your organization does a phenomenally good job, and has scaled that concept of identifying people with preventable blindness as well as getting them treated together. I think that it is a responsibility for companies such as Tricog to ensure that treatment happens after diagnosis. Now, this does not happen all the time, because what we're dealing is with an infrastructure that is lacking.
Mm-hmm.
But our goal is, as soon as we identify somebody with a heart attack, we have our medical team who will call that doctor saying, you have a patient there with a heart attack. You need to do ABCD, and then connect them with a higher center where further treatment can happen. And that is the goal for us. And it happens close to 10,000 times every day. And that is a very, very important moral responsibility, I would say, is that as a company, it's fine as a researcher, but when you're touching somebody's life, telling them you have a problem and say, I don't know what you're going to do next, it's your problem. I think that is unethical, and your organization has done a phenomenal job in that aspect.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that. We would love to talk to you, by the way. So we'll catch up with you after the session. But I think we started off not being a company that was going to provide, medical services, like human medical services or expertise to people. But over the course of our evolution, the one thing we realized is to get an appointment with a cardiologist for a non-urgent situation in the United States, it's a 3 to 6 month process. And when we started, getting our patient reviews and customer service calls from all of these people who are suffering from AFib and are not sure what to do, but they're not able to get a cardiologist, we actually made a decision 3 years back. It was a big decision for us as a company that we are actually going to enter that space. So we right now have a 50-state network of cardiologists. So we built a platform where we could have cardiologists sign up, and we try our best. And actually, our ETA is 24 hours But we try our best to get a patient to talk to a cardiologist within 2 hours. This is the same people who work in the hospitals, but somehow we are able to tap into the national network outside of their hospital systems. And we provide services more as a like a as a it's a second opinion. We don't want to be the first, but at least they can talk to somebody and then they can tell them what to do next and which kind of doctor to see. And it is just fascinating, and the country that we are in, that's what we have to do. And it's far worse. It's far worse in many places in Europe, to be honest. It's far worse, of course, in Africa. I feel actually in India, given what has been said, it's probably a better situation because there is more access and more companies who can, set up this model faster. So I mean, I think we're all collectively on step -1 of trying to solve the ultimate problem that we're talking about here.
Excellent. Go to the next question. Oh, oh, sorry. Yes, we can.
Hi there. First of all, a big applaud to each of you there going onto the cardiovascular space, which has been my career for the last 30 years. I've been practicing cardiovascular medicine in the Bay Area. And I want to touch upon a couple of things. AI is very much needed, and I sincerely hope it won't be haphazard, but it will be in a very structured way to actually help humanity. And in the cardiovascular space, over the last 30 years, which has always been there, but it is more prevalent now, is heart failure and atrial fibrillation. And the underlying cause is actually, believe it or not, sleep apnea. It's a huge culprit. So that is what everybody has to look into, all the tech giants, to see how we can have an early diagnosis and a pretty quick cure. I mean, it is curable, but it's not, people don't like the present cure, but we have to work on that. Putting AI in many ways to address how we collect data for sleep apnea is very lucrative, first of all. It not only saves lives, but it takes care of these dangerous arrhythmias like atrial fibrillation. And a simple thing like Matt was talking about DAX Copilot, which I've been using for the last 1 year, can actually go to the next level of not just being an ambient AI listening to the doctor, but maybe it can also take the history from the patient, detailed history about sleep apnea and arrhythmias, and prepare the note, including all what the doctor has to look into by the time the doctor walks in. That would be a next level and would be very useful because the doctors only have a few minutes to address all these issues. So these are some things, but I really applaud all of you for going into this space, which is very much needed.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Thank you. Maybe we go to the next question.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Tanvi. I'm a junior now at UC Santa Cruz, and I'm studying computer science and genomics.
Wow.
I've been like, studying ML like since high school. I've been taking Andrew Ng's courses, so I think it's so cool that you worked on those. But I'm going to be graduating in 2 years, and I'm going into a field that's already so heavily impacted by AI. And when I kind of look up to my mentors to ask, like how is this kind of going to look for me, the general answer I get is nobody really knows. And so my question is to you guys, as people that have been in the field of AI for a really long time, what advice do you have for people that are kind of at my level where like, I haven't really started my career yet, so I don't know what I should be looking for? So yeah, what's your advice for that?
Matt, you want to take that, and I'll do so next.
All right. So yeah, well, first of all, applaud you on your journey. I think it's in pretty much anything that you study. Again, as Andrew would like to say, there's opportunities to bring AI knowledge into almost every domain. So having AI and genomics expertise, I think, puts you in a great position. Yes, the future is extremely uncertain, but there is phenomenal amount of things we have no idea about in genomics. I would say that you've been practicing much longer than me, but I think either of us, we might be able to name 3 or 4 genomic risk factors that we could actually do something about, or we haven't, some working knowledge of. But yet there's this, just kind of what we talked about, unstructured data. There's a massive amount of information that we can't unlock, and we want to, for our patients, because we know there's insights in there that can help us take care of our patients, and we don't have the tools or the combinations of expertise to achieve that. So I would actually say that you're in an amazing field, and you're headed for hopefully a bright future for all of us.
I think tactically, I can also suggest stay in the field. I think genomics and AI, right? And you can almost see the future in a way that it's going to get more multimodal.
Yeah.
So pick any disease area, you have genomics data, add epigenetics, add proteomics, add everything, connect it with the real world data assets, and you almost have a shot at discovering a new cure.
So I already got a 5-minute warning. So let us try to get as many questions as possible. Let's do a little bit of a rapid fire now. Do you want to go next? Yeah.
Hi, good morning. I'm Avik Pal, founder of CF Cliniums. First of all, I feel humbled to be in this room. A lot of great doctors, physicians, PhD scientists. I'm just a humble engineer. My question to you is, heard some excellent journeys and some great hard facts. But for biotech entrepreneurs, what do you look for in a technology partner? And this is in the context of, let's be honest, Silicon Valley has long tried to make an impact in healthcare and life sciences, but has not been able to do that unlike the other industries, right? So how can the tech talent from the Valley, play a better role? Is it lack of understanding of science, complexities, holistic thing, whatever it is?
I'll quickly answer this. I think one of the singular reasons why TriCog is successful is not that I'm a cardiologist, but my co-founder is actually an engineer, right? And I do believe that engineers, or the engineering discipline of solving problems when brought into medicine, and that is what has made the biggest difference. So I would, to all the engineers here in this room, I think there is a lot of work remaining in medicine, a lot of unsolved problems remaining in medicine. And you need medicine and engineering to sit together to solve these problems.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly add to that. When I was interviewing, or when I was being interviewed for the position to be CEO of AliveCore by Vinod, I was just sitting there mind boggled on. I actually asked him, I said, what is wrong with you? I just know nothing about healthcare. And he said, actually, that is the best part that we want to bring in. And then since then, I have brought a team of, at least 60 of us we are purely from technology, semiconductors, consumer services, and everybody's here for the mission. And sometimes when I think back of the kinds of problems we were trying to solve in tech companies, they're just completely not necessary for the world to solve. We were trying to, make up problems to solve. Whereas here we actually have problems to solve. So I actually welcome anybody from technology. And we are prime example. The team at AliveCore is a prime example of people who, we're not from healthcare, but came in to do what we're doing right now. So welcome.
Excellent. Next question.
First of all, thank you so much for your sharing your wonderful journeys and insights. So I think this is a great panel. We have a tech platform, we have founders from health, and then at the intersection of pharma. So my question is, just like analogous to what mobile technology did, we have now cameras which are obsolete because we use our phones, banks which don't go to. AI is progressing in different portions and advancing different health issues, and everything is going to converge at one point. Epics and Cerner's, two largest ones. We've seen several technologies that either merged or then, sort of failed because nothing happened. So what is the future? The platform play where a lot of health technologies would come into together, because as a possible patient, I would not want to wear 10 different devices for 10 different preventive things. And similarly for founders who are building in this, what to keep in mind as we possibly go into the future where things would converge at say 5-10 years from now.
I can take a quick shot at that, and perhaps the rest of you can chime in. One, I will not speak about the technology convergence, but I will for sure tell you that healthcare is heading to at home, and that is a belief I believe right down to my bone. Today, Tricog is a B2B company, but the leaders of healthcare will be B2C. And I do believe that, and Matt will agree with me, is that 65% of everything that we do in an office or a hospital can be done at home. So I will just say that the future is going to be at home, powered by all of these technologies that you're seeing today.
Unfortunately, we only have time for one last question, but I hope you also have time to then connect with the speaker. So maybe we'll take the last one.
Hi, my name is Sriram Raghavendran. I've been in healthcare and data for a while. So I was curious, maybe for Charit and Priya, the data that you collect, do you integrate it with the data from the health systems? And if so, is that done through the patient consent or directly working with the systems?
Yeah, I can go first. So the B2C data that we collect, which is through our devices, the EULA is set up where we have access, we own the rights to that data, we as an Alive Core. When we work with institutions like Mayo Clinic, Emory, Mass General, for example, we worked with all of them to obtain 12-lead data when we were submitting our own 12-lead device. All the right permissions have been taken. I mean, these are large entities, and we all hire lawyers for a reason, and there is a lot of them, and all the right documentation has been done.
On my side of the world, much harder problem to solve because there is no unified EMR system that exists. So we had to build the infrastructure to gather data in the digital form, quite literally, and build out the necessary permissions that were needed to acquire that data.
Can we give a big round of applause to the panel? This has been very, very insightful. Thank you.
Yeah, I like this.